Daniel had been looking for a job for almost 3 weeks. Every morning, he woke up, made himself a cup of coffee, opened his laptop, and started looking through job advertisements. At first, he had been excited about the idea of finding his first real job. He had imagined himself walking into a nice office, meeting new people, learning new things, and finally earning his own money. But after 3 weeks, the excitement was beginning to disappear. His small apartment had become his office, his bedroom, and his waiting room all at the same time. His laptop was always open on the kitchen table. His resume was saved in several different versions. His phone was never far away because he was afraid he might miss a call from a company. The worst part was that most companies wanted experience. 2 years of experience, 3 years of experience, sometimes even 5. Daniel couldn't understand it. How am I supposed to get experience if nobody wants to give me a first chance? He said to himself one Monday morning. He was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at another job advertisement. The position was for an office assistant at a small company downtown. Daniel had almost closed the page when one sentence at the bottom caught his attention. Previous experience is preferred but not required. Training will be provided. He read it again. Then he leaned closer to the screen. The job involved answering phone calls, replying to emails, organizing documents, making appointments, and helping other employees with everyday office tasks. Daniel didn't have experience doing those things in an office, but he felt that he could learn. He opened his resume. His resume wasn't terrible, but it wasn't very impressive either. He had graduated from university the previous year. Since then, he had worked part-time in his uncle's small shop and done some volunteer work at a community center. He had never had a full-time job. He had never worked in an office. He had never even used a professional office phone. Still, he decided to apply. The company was called Brightway Solutions. Daniel filled in the online application carefully. He typed his name, address, phone number, education, and previous experience. Then he reached a question that made him stop. "Why are you interested in this position?" Daniel thought for a moment. He typed, "I need a job." He looked at the sentence and laughed. No, that's probably not what they want to hear. He deleted it. He tried again. "I am interested in this position because I would like to develop my professional skills and gain experience working in a team. I am a responsible person. I enjoy learning new things, and I believe I would be able to contribute to your company." He read it twice. It sounded much better. He clicked the submit button. A message appeared on the screen. "Your application has been successfully submitted." Daniel leaned back in his chair. For a few seconds, he felt proud of himself. Then the familiar doubt returned. There were probably hundreds of people applying for the same position. Why would they choose him? He closed his laptop and went to make another cup of coffee. By lunchtime, he had almost forgotten about the application. That evening, he cooked some noodles, watched a movie, and went to bed early. The next morning, he continued looking for other jobs. He knew better than to wait for one company. On Tuesday, he applied for 4 more positions. On Wednesday, he applied for 3. On Thursday afternoon, he was sitting on his sofa, watching a video on his phone when his phone suddenly rang. The number was unfamiliar. Daniel looked at the screen. He didn't answer. The phone stopped ringing. He stared at the number for a few seconds. Maybe it was a company. Maybe it was a salesperson. Maybe it was someone who had the wrong number. Then the phone rang again. Daniel remembered something his father had told him a few weeks earlier. "If you're looking for a job, don't ignore unknown numbers," Daniel quickly answered. "Hello? Hi. Is this Daniel?" "Yes. Hi, Daniel. This is Sarah from Brightway Solutions. I'm calling about the office assistant position you applied for." Daniel immediately sat up. "Oh, hi. We've reviewed your application, and we'd like to invite you to come in for an interview." Daniel was silent for a moment. Sarah laughed gently. Daniel, are you still there? Yes, sorry. I'm here. I just wasn't expecting the call. That's all right. We were impressed by your application and we'd like to meet you. Daniel felt a smile appear on his face. I'd be very happy to come in. Great. Would Friday morning at 10 work for you? Yes. Absolutely. Perfect. I'll send you the address and some information by email. The interview should take about 30 minutes. Thank you very much. You're welcome. We look forward to meeting you. After the call ended, Daniel remained on the sofa, staring at his phone. He had an interview. His first real job interview. He suddenly felt nervous. Very nervous. He stood up and walked around the apartment. What am I going to say? He went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. You need to relax, he told himself. But he didn't relax. Instead, he went back to his laptop and started searching for information about job interviews. He watched videos about common interview questions. He read articles about what to wear. He learned that he should arrive early, make eye contact, listen carefully, and prepare some questions for the interviewer. One question appeared again and again. Tell me about yourself. Daniel practiced his answer. My name is Daniel. I recently graduated from university, and I'm looking for my first full-time position. He stopped. That sounded too simple. He tried again. My name is Daniel. I recently graduated from university, and I'm now looking for my first full-time position. During university, I worked part-time in my uncle's shop and volunteered at a community center. Those experiences helped me become more comfortable working with different people. Solving small problems and taking responsibility. That sounded better. He wrote it down. Then he practiced another question. Why do you want to work for us? He thought about it. He couldn't say. Because I need money. He knew that. So he tried. I think this position would be a good opportunity for me because I want to develop my professional skills and learn how a real office works. I also like working with people, organizing things and helping solve problems. Daniel practiced the answer several times. Then he found another difficult question. What is your biggest weakness? He stared at the screen. What am I supposed to say? He searched for advice. Some websites suggested saying that you were a perfectionist. Daniel didn't like that answer. He decided to be honest. Sometimes I spend too much time checking my work because I want to make sure everything is correct. He thought about it. That was true. He had always been a little slow when he was afraid of making mistakes. He added, but I'm learning to manage my time better and understand which tasks need more attention and which ones don't. Daniel nodded. That sounds okay. He practiced until he felt tired. By 10:30 that night, he had prepared answers for almost every question he could imagine. He put his resume in a folder. He chose a clean white shirt and a pair of dark trousers. Then he checked the interview address. He checked it again. And one more time before going to bed. The next morning, Daniel woke up before his alarm. For a few seconds, he didn't know why. Then he remembered. The interview. His stomach tightened. He got out of bed, took a shower, shaved, and put on his clothes. He looked at himself in the mirror. He didn't look like a successful businessman. He didn't look completely confident, but he looked professional enough. That's good enough, he said. The interview was at 10, but Daniel left his apartment at 8:15. He wanted to arrive early. The bus ride usually took about 30 minutes, so he thought he had plenty of time. Unfortunately, the traffic was much worse than usual. The bus moved slowly through the city. Daniel looked at his watch. 8:45. Still fine. 9 o'clock. Still okay. 9:15. Daniel started getting nervous. The bus was barely moving. He looked outside and saw a long line of cars stretching down the street. He decided to get off and walk. According to his phone, it would take about 25 minutes. He walked as quickly as he could. By the time he reached the office building, it was 9:45. He was sweating. His hair was slightly messy. He stood outside the building for a moment and tried to catch his breath. This is not how I imagined it, he thought. He quickly fixed his hair, took a deep breath, and walked inside. The office was on the 8th floor. Daniel entered the elevator with 3 other people. As the doors closed, he looked at his reflection. He looked nervous. Very nervous. A man standing beside him noticed. "Job interview?" the man asked with a smile. Daniel looked at him. "Yes, good luck. Thank you." The elevator reached the 8th floor. Daniel stepped out. The office was brighter and larger than he had expected. There were several desks, a small waiting area, and a reception desk near the entrance. A woman sitting behind the desk looked up. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Good morning. My name is Daniel Parker. I have an interview at 10 o'clock with Sarah." The woman checked her computer. "Yes, Daniel. Sarah will be with you shortly. Please have a seat." "Thank you." Daniel sat down. He looked around. People were talking quietly. Phones were ringing. Someone walked past him, carrying a stack of documents. A printer was making strange noises somewhere behind him. Everything seemed normal, but Daniel felt as if everyone could tell that he was there for an interview. At exactly 10 o'clock, a woman walked toward him. "Daniel?" He stood up. "Yes. Hi, I'm Sarah." They shook hands. "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too. Come with me." They walked into a small meeting room. Sarah closed the door and invited Daniel to sit down. Before starting the interview, she gave him a bottle of water. "You look a little nervous," she said. Daniel smiled. "Is it that obvious?" "Just a little." He laughed. "I've never had an interview like this before. That's completely fine. We're not expecting you to know everything. We mainly want to get to know you." Daniel felt a little more relaxed. Sarah looked at his resume. "So Daniel, why don't you start by telling me a little about yourself?" Daniel took a breath. Then he began. "My name is Daniel. I recently graduated from university, and I'm now looking for my first full-time position. During university, I worked part-time in my uncle's shop, where I helped customers, organized products, and handled payments. I also volunteered at a community center, where I helped organize activities for local families." Sarah listened carefully. Daniel continued. "I know I don't have much professional experience yet, but I'm willing to learn. I enjoy working with people, and I think I'm a responsible person. When I agree to do something, I take it seriously." Sarah smiled. "That sounds good. What made you interested in our company?" Daniel had prepared for this question. "I read about the company before coming here. I noticed that Brightway works with many small businesses, and I like the idea of helping different customers solve different problems. I also think this position would give me a chance to learn a lot about professional office work." Sarah nodded. Then she asked him about his strengths. Daniel said he was reliable and organized. She asked him about his weakness. He gave the answer he had practiced. Then she asked a question he hadn't prepared for. "Tell me about a time when you made a mistake." Daniel paused. He thought about his part-time job. "There was a time when I was working in my uncle's shop, and I gave a customer the wrong change." "What happened?" "I didn't notice it immediately. A few minutes later, I realized that the numbers didn't match. I checked the receipt, found the customer, and corrected the mistake." "How did you feel?" "Embarrassed." Sarah smiled. "I think most people would." Daniel smiled too, but I learned that I should slow down and check my work, especially when the store is busy. Sarah wrote something in her notebook. Then she looked up. That sounds like a useful lesson. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. When it finally ended, Daniel realized that he had been talking much more naturally than he expected. Sarah stood up. "Thank you for coming in, Daniel. Thank you for inviting me. We're meeting a few other candidates this week, and we'll contact you early next week." "Of course." Daniel shook her hand. "I appreciate your time." He walked out of the office. When the elevator doors closed, he finally let out a long breath. He wasn't sure whether he would get the job, but he felt proud. He had done something he had been afraid to do. He had walked into a company where he knew nobody, sat across from a stranger, and talked about himself for 30 minutes. That alone felt like progress. The next few days were difficult. Daniel tried not to think about the interview, but it was almost impossible. Every time his phone rang, he checked the screen immediately. Every time he opened his email, he hoped to see a message from Brightway Solutions. Nothing came on Monday. Nothing came on Tuesday. By Wednesday afternoon, Daniel had started to believe they had chosen someone else. He was about to close his email when a new message appeared. His heart jumped. Brightway Solutions. Second interview, he opened it. They wanted him to come back on Friday. Daniel smiled. Then he realized something. The second interview might be even harder. This time, he decided not to memorize answers. Instead, he learned more about the company. He read their website carefully. He learned about their customers and the services they provided. He wrote down several questions. One question was, what does a successful person in this position usually do well? Another was, what would you expect me to learn during my first 3 months? He liked the second question. It showed that he was thinking about the future. On Friday morning, Daniel returned to the office. This time, he wasn't quite as nervous. He already knew where the elevator was. He already knew where the reception desk was. He even recognized the receptionist. "Good morning, Daniel. Nice to see you again." "Good morning. Nice to see you too." A few minutes later, Sarah came to get him, but this time another person was with her. "Daniel, I'd like you to meet David. He's our office manager." David shook his hand. "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too." They sat down together. The second interview was more practical. David wanted to know how Daniel thought about problems. He gave him different situations. What would you do if you had 3 tasks and all 3 seemed urgent? Daniel thought carefully. I would first find out which one actually needed to be done first. If I wasn't sure, I would ask my manager rather than simply guessing. David nodded. Good. What if a customer called and was very angry? I would listen first and try to understand what the problem was. I wouldn't argue with the customer. If I couldn't solve the problem myself, I would explain that I needed to speak with someone who could help. David leaned back in his chair. That sounds reasonable. Then he asked, what would you do if you were asked to do something you didn't know how to do? Daniel smiled. I would ask someone to show me. Wouldn't you try to figure it out yourself first? I would try if it was something simple. But if I thought I might make a serious mistake, I would ask. David smiled. That's actually a good answer. At the end of the interview, David asked Daniel if he had any questions. Daniel took out his notebook. I have 2. He asked his first question, then his second. David answered both. Finally, Sarah stood up. Thank you for coming in again. Thank you for having me. David shook his hand. I hope we'll see you again soon. Daniel smiled. So do I. When Daniel walked outside, he felt something he hadn't felt before. Hope. But he also understood that there was nothing else he could do. The decision was no longer in his hands. He had to wait. That weekend, he tried to forget about the job. He went to the park. He cleaned his apartment. He cooked dinner. He even went to the cinema alone. On Sunday evening, he received a message. Please call us when you have a moment. It was from David. Daniel stared at the message. He didn't know whether it was good news or bad news. He called immediately. Hello, Daniel. It's David. Hi. How are you? I'm good. I'll get straight to the point. We'd like to offer you the position. For a moment, Daniel didn't understand the words. Then he did. He smiled. Really? Yes. We were impressed by your attitude and your willingness to learn. Daniel looked down at the floor. He suddenly remembered all the job applications that had been rejected, the emails that had never received an answer, the nights when he wondered whether he would ever find a job. Now, finally, someone had given him a chance. I'd be very happy to accept. Excellent. We'll send you the contract tonight. Your first day will be next Monday. Thank you so much. After the call ended, Daniel stood in the middle of his apartment. He didn't know what to do. Then he laughed. He called his mother. She answered immediately. Hello, Mom. I got the job. There was silence for a second. Then she shouted happily. I knew you would. Daniel laughed. You didn't always sound so confident. Well, I didn't want to make you too confident. They talked for almost an hour. His mother asked about the salary, the company, the working hours, and his first day. Before they ended the call, she gave him some advice. Remember, Daniel, getting the job is only the beginning. I know. You're going to make mistakes. I know. You're going to meet difficult people. I know. You're probably going to have some bad days. Daniel laughed. Mom, you're making me feel great. She laughed too. But you're also going to learn a lot. Just remember to listen, work hard, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Daniel became quiet. Thanks, Mom. You'll be fine. The following Monday, Daniel woke up before his alarm. He was nervous again. But this time, it was a different kind of nervousness. He was going somewhere that belonged to him. He put on his new shirt, picked up his bag, and left the apartment. The bus was crowded. People were going to work. Some were drinking coffee. Some were looking at their phones. Some looked tired. Daniel looked out the window and smiled. 3 months ago, he had imagined what his first day at work might look like. Now it was actually happening. When he arrived at Brightway Solutions, Sarah was waiting for him. Good morning, Daniel. Ready for your first day? He smiled. As ready as I'll ever be. She laughed. That's the right answer. She introduced him to the team. There was Emma, who worked in customer service. There was Mike, who worked in accounts. There was Lisa, who managed several important clients. And there were several other people whose names Daniel knew he would probably forget before lunch. Everyone was friendly. Someone showed him where the kitchen was. Someone else explained how to use the coffee machine. Then Sarah took him to his desk. There was a computer, a telephone, and a notebook waiting for him. Daniel sat down. He looked at the screen. For a few seconds, he simply stared at it. This was his first real job, his first real desk, his first real working day. Sarah stood beside him. Don't worry if everything seems confusing at first. Daniel smiled. It already does. That feeling will disappear. She was right. But it didn't disappear that day. The first few hours were difficult. Daniel learned how to log into the company's system. He learned where different documents were stored. He learned how to answer phone calls. He learned how to send internal messages. He learned how to schedule meetings. There were so many new things that his notebook quickly filled with information. At lunch, he sat with Emma. She noticed how tired he looked. You look like you've been working here for 10 years. Daniel laughed. I feel like I've been working here for 10 years. Emma smiled. Don't worry. The first week is always the hardest. Did you find it difficult? Of course. What was your first mistake? Emma thought for a moment. I sent a report to the wrong customer. Daniel laughed. That sounds serious. It was. What happened? I panicked. What did your manager do? He helped me fix it. And then? He told me something I've never forgotten. What? Emma smiled. He said, a mistake is only a disaster if you refuse to learn from it. Daniel wrote the sentence in his notebook. I like that. You'll probably need it. She was right. On Thursday afternoon, Daniel made his first serious mistake. He was updating a list of customer appointments when he accidentally deleted several entries. At first, he thought he could fix it himself. He clicked different buttons. He searched through the system. He tried to undo the changes. Nothing worked. His heart started beating faster. He imagined his manager getting angry. He imagined losing his job during his first week. Finally, he stood up and went to David's office. David, I think I've made a mistake. David looked up. What happened? Daniel explained everything. David walked over to his computer. "Okay, don't panic. I already am," David laughed. "We have a backup." He restored the missing information. Everything came back. Daniel felt a huge sense of relief. "Thank you." David nodded. "Next time, ask for help sooner." "I will, but you did the right thing by telling me." Daniel returned to his desk. He sat down and looked at the screen. He realized that he had spent 20 minutes worrying about a problem that took David less than 2 minutes to solve. That evening, he wrote in his notebook, "When you don't know what to do, ask." It became one of the most useful lessons of his first year, sir. As the weeks passed, Daniel slowly became more comfortable. He stopped checking every email 3 times before sending it. He stopped being afraid of the phone. He learned the names of all his co-workers. He began to understand how the company worked. One afternoon, he received a phone call from an angry customer. The man had been waiting for a document and wanted to know why it had not arrived. Daniel listened carefully. At first, the customer spoke loudly. Daniel didn't interrupt. When the man finally stopped, Daniel said calmly, "I understand why you're frustrated. Let me check what happened and see how I can help." He checked the system. The document had been sent to the wrong email address. Daniel corrected the problem and sent it again. The customer became much calmer. "Thank you," he said. "I apologize for the inconvenience. Well, mistakes happen. Thank you for fixing it." When Daniel put the phone down, Emma looked at him. "That was good." Daniel smiled. "A few weeks ago, I would have panicked. That's because you're getting better." Daniel looked at his computer. Maybe she was right. He wasn't the same person who had walked into the office for his interview. He had started to understand something about confidence. Confidence didn't come before experience. It came because of experience. You didn't become confident and then do difficult things. You did difficult things, made mistakes, learned from them, and slowly became confident. 3 months after Daniel started the job, the company had an important meeting with a new client. David asked Daniel to prepare the meeting room. There would be 12 people in the meeting. Daniel needed to prepare the documents, arrange the chairs, check the presentation, prepare coffee and water, and make sure everything was ready before the clients arrived. He wrote down every task. He checked everything twice. At 8:30 the next morning, the meeting room looked perfect. Then, at 8:45, the computer stopped working. Daniel stared at the screen. He tried to restart it. Nothing happened. He checked the cable. Everything seemed fine. He called the IT department. No answer. He called again. Still nothing. For a few seconds, panic returned. But then Daniel remembered his first week. He didn't have time to panic. He needed another solution. He found another laptop. He connected it to the screen. The presentation worked. At 9 o'clock, the clients arrived. The meeting went smoothly. Afterward, David came over. "I heard we had a little computer problem." Daniel smiled. "A little problem? How did you handle it?" "I found another laptop." David nodded. "Good." Daniel looked at him. "I almost panicked, but you didn't." Daniel smiled. That was true. He still felt nervous when things went wrong. He still made mistakes. But now he knew what to do next. A year after his first application, Daniel was sitting at the same desk, but everything felt different. He had learned how to work. He had learned how to communicate. He had learned how to deal with difficult customers. He had learned how to manage his time. He had learned that mistakes were normal. Most importantly, he had learned that he didn't need to know everything. He only needed to be willing to learn. One morning, a new employee arrived at the office. Her name was Sophie. She looked almost exactly like Daniel had looked on his first day. Nervous, quiet, a little lost. Daniel walked over and introduced himself. "Hi, you must be Sophie. I'm Daniel. Welcome to Brightway." "Thank you. I'm really nervous." "I was nervous too. Really? Very." She looked surprised. "But you seem so comfortable now." Daniel smiled. "That comes with time." He showed her around the office. He explained how to use the printer, where to find the documents, and how to contact different departments. Before leaving her at her desk, he said something that Emma had once told him. "If you don't understand something, ask." Sophie nodded. "I will, and don't worry about making mistakes. That's easier said than done." Daniel laughed. "I know, but you'll learn." He walked back to his desk. For a moment, he thought about the person he had been a year earlier. He had been afraid of not being good enough. He had been afraid of making mistakes. He had been afraid that everyone else knew what they were doing, while he didn't. Now he understood that almost everyone had felt the same way at some point. Nobody started as an expert. Nobody knew everything on their first day. Everyone had to begin somewhere. That evening, Daniel took the bus home. The city outside the window looked the same as it had a year earlier. The same streets, the same buildings, the same traffic. But Daniel felt different. When he had first arrived in the city, he had felt like a stranger. Now, as he looked out at the lights and people moving through the streets, he felt that the city was becoming his home. He thought about his first job application. He remembered sitting at the kitchen table, looking at the screen, and wondering whether anyone would give him a chance. Someone had. But looking back, Daniel realized that getting the job had only been the first step. The real change had happened afterward. It happened when he made his first mistake and chose to tell the truth. It happened when he answered his first difficult phone call. It happened when he stayed late to finish something he didn't understand. It happens when he asked for help instead of pretending to know everything. It happened every time he was nervous but decided to try anyway. Daniel smiled as the bus moved through the city. He had started looking for a job because he wanted to earn money. But along the way, he had found something more important. He had found confidence. He had found independence. He had found people who were willing to help him. And most importantly, he had discovered that he was capable of more than he had believed. When he got home, he put his bag on the chair and walked into the kitchen. His laptop was still on the table. For a second, he remembered the old days. The days when he had spent hours looking through job advertisements. The days when he had worried about his future. The days when he had wondered whether he would ever get his first chance. He opened the laptop. The same job website was still bookmarked. Daniel looked at it for a moment. Then he closed it. He didn't need it anymore. He made himself a cup of coffee and sat down by the window. Tomorrow would be another working day. There would probably be problems. There would probably be difficult customers. There would probably be mistakes. But Daniel wasn't afraid of those things anymore. He knew that work was not about being perfect. Life wasn't about being perfect either. Sometimes all you needed was the courage to start, the courage to apply for the job, the courage to walk into the interview, the courage to make a mistake, the courage to ask for help, and the courage to try again the next morning. Daniel took a sip of his coffee and looked out at the city. A year ago, he had been waiting for someone to give him a chance. Now he understood something. Sometimes the most important chance in your life is the one you give yourself. And sometimes your first job isn't really the beginning of your career. It's the beginning of believing that you can build one. Daniel smiled. Then he turned off the light. Tomorrow was another day, and he was ready for it.